Hello, and welcome to Learning DITA Live 2019. I'm Alan Pringle of Scriptorium, and I am moderating this session, Training Your AI Using DITA Files. Learning DITA Live is brought to you by Scriptorium, the content strategy experts. Since 1997, Scriptorium has helped companies manage, structure, organize, and distribute content in an efficient way. If you are trying to figure out how the DITA model can best support your content, or you are setting up a DITA system, please contact us. We would love to work with you. LearningDITA.com and Learning DITA Live would not be possible without the help from our sponsors. I want to tell you a little bit about how this session will work. Attendees are muted during the webcast. Even so, we still want your input during the session. Please type your questions and your comments at any time during the session in the questions module, and our speaker will answer the questions at the end of the session. If you would, take some time now to locate the questions module in the GoToWebinar interface. At the beginning of the question and answer phase, please look for a link to a session evaluation survey in the questions module. We very much appreciate your feedback on the event sessions. And with that, I want to hand things over to our presenter. Vishal, are you there?
Hey, hi, Alan.
Hi there. Let me turn things over to you. One moment.
Sure.
Okay, you should have control now. We can see your slides.
Hello,
Great.
everybody. Yeah.
We can see. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, I think I'll get started. Good morning, good day, everybody. I'm Vishal, and I work at Cisco. And the session that I'm taking today is about how to train your AI bot using DITA files. So it's around 9:30 p.m. in India. I work from Bangalore. So anybody from this zone, good evening to you folks as well. So I've been in the industry for around 12 years as a information developer. I've been with IBM for around 11 years, and I've recently joined Cisco around 1 year back. And the session today is about a series of adventures that I've had, about creating an AI instance from my data source files. I mean, we all know that how difficult it is to create a bot, right? Developers actually spend a lot of time curating and building the system. And this is a much more easier way where you can actually, if you have a set of data files, you can actually run a few scripts and you can actually get your bot running. So this is about it. And this is a broad agenda. So we actually talk about the changing landscape, the kind of bots, the new interfaces that is there in the landscape now, the types, and a lot of people get actually confused with this. I mean, what is the difference between a search and an AI bot, right? So that's something that we delve deeply here. And then about how do I set my own bot and train it. And again, with a few live examples. And I am also sharing the source code that I have created for this in my GitHub link. So that's a broad agenda for today. So bots are the major playground right now, right? I mean, if you look at a couple of Gartner reports and the kind of figures that they have actually put out, this is all from a Gartner report that was published in 2017. So 20% of all user interactions with smartphone will take place through a virtual personal assistant, like 2019, right? If you are, and another statistic says that 31% of all respondents across developed nations use a virtual personal assistant at least once or more than one time a day. Wearable devices by 2025, it's going to be around 14 million devices out there. So essentially what it says is that we are going to move away from a broadcast style of publication to a more conversational one. We're going to move away from PDFs and online help into more about bots and conversational systems. Again, other statistics say that we are going to have 2 billion zero-touch devices, but you don't have to touch your phone again. It's more about gestures and more about voice. 7 billion personal devices, more wearables, and again, like billions of IoT touch points. So you're actually going to see a lot more of information converging, and we might not be able to keep up pace with the kind of information slush that is coming in. So what Gartner has predicted is that machine learning and VPAs will be the major strategic battlegrounds from 2017. We already passed that, and mobile apps are going to fade away and will become subversive into virtual personal assistants. So we should be interested. We should be taking up this opportunity as well to get more adventurous, play around with the new kind of tools that are there, and at least be adventurous in trying out a few things using our own data source files. So the industry has presently 3 different kinds of bots, right? You actually have a rule-based bots, which was there from 1990s. And right now we are actually having retrieval models, and the future again is about generative models. So we're not okay. Now, if you look at rule-based models, this is about how you are defining every single step that the bot is taking, right? Now, if you're having a bot like say Amy or Alexa, and you have actually defined 3 phrases there saying take call, accept call, or join call when you actually receive a incoming phone call. And you have actually coded in saying that you accept all for the phone call, and it actually picks up the call for you. But in case if you haven't coded in, a phrase which doesn't list any of these 3, the bot might get confused. So a particular instance is, Amy, connect me to the meeting, right? Whereas you have only asked the bot, you have only trained the bot to understand take call, accept call, and join call. So you need to be precise here, thinking about every single permutation combination that a customer or a user might ask, and you might have to frame every single question there. So that's one limitation of a rule-based bot, right? So that's where the newer systems like generative models and retrieval-based models come into place. Now, most of us are more familiar with generative models such as IBM Watson or Google Assistant or Google Smart Reply or even Alexa, Amazon Alexa, right? So these are retrieval-based models. Generative models are much more complex. They actually synthesize a lot of answers and rank them. So for the scope of this particular session, we are actually going deeper into IBM Watson because it's a free framework, and it's simpler to use actually. So how do I set up my own bot, right? And before that, it's essential to understand what is the difference between a search and an AI bot. So the different kinds of AI instances, the different kinds of AI conversation instances, and how you can actually build up a schema with your data files. So anybody in the audience who has been familiar with Jeopardy, this is one of the questions that Jeopardy had posed towards IBM Watson again, which was pitted against 2 human contenders. So William Wilkinson, an account of the Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia, had inspired this author's most famous novel. Now, the answer to this is Bram Stoker's Dracula. But if you actually look at this entire sentence, you would actually know that there's not even a single mention of the word Dracula or Bram Stoker, right? But if you were to enter this entire string into Google as of now, you would actually not find any direct answers. That is because most search engines do not break down strings beyond a point, and they don't actually build hypothesis or test a hypothesis that they have generated. So what a bot does is it actually evaluates multiple answers with a particular confidence level. It actually generates a hypothesis, or it generates multiple hypotheses and then measures the confidence level in that. And when you train a bot, the more corpus that you add to it, the confidence level of the bot increases. So precision builds up over multiple trainings or multiple iterations that you actually feed a bot with. So this is more about an internal working of a particular bot. This is precisely about IBM Watson. So you actually can see a lot of engines out there, like how the query is being decomposed, how different hypotheses are being generated, and how the evidence and hypothesis is actually scored over a period of time. And you actually get, so what do you actually, when you actually search on a search engine, you might be getting around like thousands and thousands of answers, right? But if you actually ask a conversation bot, it actually just gives you one answer, and often that answer is actually marked up with a particular confidence value. You might get a return answer saying that I think by a factor of 80 or 90% that the answer might be Bram Stoker or Dracula. So that's about the internal parts of it. So again, the reason why we have picked up IBM Watson is because it's an instance of it's a very good example of a closed open box. Now, if you go to a restaurant and you order from a menu, right? You actually order from a menu, and the chef turns out a fantastic dish for you, right? You have no control about the kind of ingredients that the chef is using, the kind of marination that he might be experimenting with, or the different sauces that he might be using it. But nevertheless, you are able to enjoy the dish, and you're happy about it, right? It's a good experience. You're actually getting a good value for your money. But Watson, what it actually does is it actually gives you a kitchen. It doesn't give you a dish. It actually gives you a kitchen where you are in control of your ingredients. You are in control of what you want to make. You might not be able to turn out and make a fantastic dish, but you can actually play around with the ingredients and get a feel about how these different things or how these different ingredients make up a particular dish. So essentially, it empowers you to play around with the framework, to play around with the kind of different intents and entities, and to build up your unique experience naturally or very organically. So these are a couple of AI instances that is actually from Watson. So you can actually see that the last one which is being linked here. And besides a conversation instance, there's also NLU and tone analyzer and visual recognition, along with a couple of other ones. So I can actually take you to the actual thing. So this is about how you can actually, using IBM Watson is actually a free service until you cross a threshold of around 2000 APIs. So that is, so if you are an amateur, if you're just going to be playing around with the system, this is perfectly fine for you. Unless you want to deploy it to customers, that's when IBM is going to charge you. So it's free to start with. You just have to have a Bluemix account where your username and password and a few other details are required. So you can actually get started. And since this is going to take a lot of time, I've actually set up the windows. So I can actually walk you through it. So once you get started, it actually gives you a service name where you have to enter something like data learning and so on. And you can actually, once you click create, and okay, so this is where the pricing details are. You can actually see that 10,000 messages per month is actually free. So anything beyond that, yeah, they might be charging you. So once you create this instance, you actually get a launch tool. So this is what I have, and so I'll walk you through this once you cover more of the presentation. So how do I train my own bot? So it's a very simple thing, right? You only need to know about 3 different ingredients here: an intent, an entity, and a dialogue. So these are the 3 basic building blocks that you need to create a conversation instance. So an intent, again, is actually a purpose or a goal expressed by a customer, right? An entity is an object on which you're going to do a particular action. And a dialogue, as it's very obvious. It actually uses the intents and entities to give you a particular answer. So, and a more easier way for us technical communicators to identify with these 3 building blocks is that just remember that an intent is an action that you're going to perform on a particular feature or a component. An intent is a verb. An entity here in our own parlance is actually a noun. You can consider that as a component or a product on which you're going to do a particular task. And dialogue is again the kind of response that you're going to elicit when you're going to run an action on a particular component or a feature. So that's pretty much the entire relation to it, and it's very easy to identify. Like you can actually look at the few samples that are listed here, right? Switch on the headlamps or turn on the radio, or more. Or in a technical communicator's parlance, like how do I configure my workload manager, or how do I resolve error 56623, or how do I troubleshoot a few installation issues. So it's easy to understand what are the intents and what are the entities here, because intents are again, what is your verb, what is your action that you're going to do on a particular entity, which is your noun, right? So breaking down this, we might be able to get the intents and entities. So your intents are in red and your entities are in blue, right? Your liberty, your workload manager, error code, so and so are all in blue. And your entities, which is your verbs, verbs or your action that you're going to do on that particular component are all listed out in red. So it's pretty easy to relate. And once you have actually made this connection, you can actually see how it fits into the data framework perfectly well. So, so what we have done is, before that, okay, how do I create a dialogue node? This is where the most magic in this entire adventure lies in, right? The more well you have crafted your dialogue nodes, the more unique your results or more accurate your results are going to be, right? Now, this is a simple question. How do I configure a workload manager? Where if you break it down into intents and entities, you can actually see that configure and workload manager are the respective intent and entity here. And it's a pretty straightforward question, for which you actually get a pretty straightforward answer. Run the WLM command and you get it. Now, what if you want a deeper semantic here, right? What if you want if the bot wants to ask you a run-up question, something like, how do I troubleshoot installation issues? And the bot would have to ask you, on which platform are you in? Because there are different troubleshooting issues with regard to different operating systems. So you might say Linux SUSE, and again, the bot has to ask you which or what is the version of your sample product. Right, and so these are, like this is a mechanism that you actually build into your dialogue nodes. That's, as I said earlier, that's where most of your magic lies. So why have we used DITA? Because of it, again, based on XML, and it's easier for developers to play around with or to get a hang of it. it's easier for technical communicators also, because we already have a cleaned up, well-crafted source out there. We just have to leverage it. It has a lot of inherent semantics. It's pretty rich in syntax. It has a lot of conditions and filters, and this is important. Conditions and filters, we are able to use that to switch on or turn on a lot of these particular factors. So it's very developer-friendly source. You can actually use script to migrate and generate .json files from your data source code. And again, it's interesting learning. So these are some of the real data source files that we have used, and we have actually changed it into the product because it's against the enterprise law. So you can actually see that installing sample product using some installation manager, right? And we can actually see that the intents here are actually all marked up, like installing Word, or the installing the verb action that, or the gerund that is actually marked up, highlighted here. And again, another data file where your gerunds or your intents are marked up and listed. And again, this is again a troubleshooting file. And these are your entities, your different entities that are used across the source files that we have flagged or we have leveraged from our DITA WAL files. We have filter files, and again, a couple of other entities that we have used across a few files. So what we had envisaged earlier, we had actually put it into a couple of nodes like this. So this is exactly the way how our neurons in the brain work. So every time you actually hear a word or a sentence, our brain actually breaks it up into multiples or smaller strings and tries to fire up the strings which are associated. Now, if you can actually see the intents are marked up in blue and the entities are marked up in green, right? You have your different installation tasks, your different configuration, and your different troubleshooting or resolving tasks listed out in your left, and the various nouns, right? If with regard to platforms or different components, let's say AX or Red Hat, these are different platforms. The components we have actually listed out, or the components of the product names that we have actually listed out as components. So a bot recognizes an intent with a hash sign, as you see in hash install or hash configure or hash resolving, and entities, they are actually identified by their @ symbol. And so once you actually start asking the bot, right, once the conversation kicks in, and you ask the bot, how do I install on Linux SUSE? So you can actually see that only two different neurons, or and one intent and one entity has fired up, right? Rest everything has been grayed out. So which means that it has actually understood the word install, and it has actually connected it to the string Linux SUSE in the platform entity. So what I have actually depicted is multiple ways you can actually ask about how you can install on Linux SUSE. You can actually use 3 different questions, but elicit the same single response here. Let's look at another example here. Something like, how do I install with an installation manager? Again, you can actually ask the same question multiple ways, using the installation manager to install, or installing using installation manager. But no matter how you ask it, it has actually captured the correct intent, which is actually installing, and the actual component, which is actually installation manager. Rest everything has been grayed, and only 2 of these nodes have been fired up. And another example here, like how do I troubleshoot installation errors, or how do I avoid installation errors? Again, 2 of these nodes have been fired up, like installation errors and installation. So this is pretty much about how these nodes work by connecting with each other. Again, resolving problems or resolving one particular issue like error 416, right? Everything else has been grayed out. And this is one particular complex question, like I have purchased the sample product and have completed the installation. I'm trying to configure it with WAS, but how do I go about it? You can actually see how the bot has broken up. This is a screenshot from the actual bot working, and you can actually see how the bot has identified the intent entities and and mapped it to the particular nodes that is there in the entire dialog box. But you can also see that it has by mistake marked up I am as an entity, right? That is because I have actually listed I am as a synonym for installation manager. But these are the kind of tiny errors that might creep into your source when you migrate. But over a period of time, I think we might all get used to it. We might be able to pick up those much more faster. Yeah, so this is the demo we can run. So this is IBM Watson, and so how do we actually, this is again free, so you can just log on and you can actually create a skill. So once you create a skill, it'll take a few minutes. You can actually click create new, and you can give it a name saying sample, and you can give a description, data learning, right? You click create. So you can actually add an instance where you can say install, and you can give installation. So that's your first intent that you have actually created, and you can actually add examples. So for demonstration's sake, actually I have a running bot called Learning DITA 2090, and so these are the intents that I've actually created into my bot. So I have actually keyed in a lot of commands as intents. I've actually got a couple of configure intents. And these are the entities, right? These are my nouns that I've actually picked up from my data source files. So it takes a while to load up. Give me a minute. So you can actually see the different actions. These are my these are nouns or the product names or the component names that are used. So you can also note that I've actually listed out a few actions or languages or sessions and all. But these give the bot a lot more flavor. And so these are the intents. You have your entities, and then you have your dialog nodes. You can ignore the rest. Those are more advanced features like version history and content catalog that you can actually play around with once you get moving. And your dialog node is something that actually looks like this. So once you have built up your dialog nodes, the responses in these dialog nodes are what you actually fetch from your data files. So if I look at resolving error 404, right, it actually says enter an intent. Okay, I think let's try it out. So you can actually, once you have actually furnished your intents, entities, and got a basic framework of your dialog nodes, you can actually try it out. It actually looks like this, and I can actually enter saying hi. Okay. So again, something that's got to do with training, because actually it has not been trained well enough, right? So you can actually choose to train it on the go. So you can actually see the Watson is being trained, and so these are the tiny bits of these are a look at the kind of nitty-gritties that are there, and often the biggest curve here, learning curve here, is about is to train the bot. And though we have actually gone one step further by importing a lot of these intents and entities, this is not how developers or most universities do. They actually build it from scratch up. Or if you are in a particular domain like automobile or shipping domain, there are domain-specific intents and entities that you can actually import, or that are shared across industries. But or since we have DITA source files, we might as well leverage that to generate intents and entities on the fly. So let's try this question once more, and let's see how the response is elicited. Right? How do I install the sample select? So you can actually see the difference here. How do I install the sample product? And it has actually gone into a particular concept file and given me a known accurate result. And I have found it out, and I've actually retrained the bot to give me a more precise answer. So I've actually given it the correct intent, and it has actually bought me a more correct answer, like ensure your prerequisites are in place, check so and so link to get so and so results. So this is pretty much about it, right? So it's just about how you map your intents and entities, and your dialog nodes are very important because that's where your actual magic happens. So it takes a bit to get the flow of a dialog node, because at times we actually might have a lot of parallel information, right? You might have two different methods of doing one particular step, and if you actually factor both of them in, you might have to set a condition in the bot saying, if so and so parameter happens, you might actually choose between options A and B. So these are kind of things which are not there in our source files as technical communicators, but this is something which you need to factor in when you actually build a bot. And one more interesting thing about bot is that you actually give it a lot of flavor. You can actually give it a lot of skin. Say like something like it's fun to have it. Like can you? Okay, again it's wrong. So I choose something called as a character, and it gets trained again. Now training the bot to fire up a particular intent, it takes a while. It takes a bit of a lot of training actually. It might test your patience also. Let's try it once. Something else maybe. Yeah. So in this instance, it actually has fired up intent like and entity sandwich, right? So I have built in emotions like I have built in entities like and food, and the bot has been trained to say that it's an NLP, and you shouldn't be attributing any anthropomorphic qualities to it. So it's also fun. It actually gives you a lot of time away during routine work building the bot. So that's a demo, and so the one aspect that we had learned when we actually started building the bot is that we actually started fine-tuning our information architecture strategy when we started creating JSON files for the bot. So I have listed a link from this session towards a JSON file in my GitHub. So what folks can do is you can actually there's an option of uploading the JSON files to populate your entire dialog nodes and entities and indents. So you can actually import intents by choosing one particular file. So you can actually choose the learning.data JSON file. Okay, I think my system might be hung, but you can actually choose it and you can actually get it running. So it actually imports all the intents, entities, and dialogs nodes that are there. And the JSON file is generic, which means that it doesn't have any enterprise level listing of nouns or product names or anything else. It just has very generic information. So it's very easy to get a hang of it and get to play around with also. So this is how we actually went about it. We've actually mapped the entire series of our verbs or gerunds across a lot of our books, across a lot of our guides and command reference guides and release notes, and map them to indents. And so you can actually see the indents on your x-axis and entities on your y-axis, right? And the more the corpus, the more accuracy you're going to build into your bot. And it's easy to see results when you start off it, but as you scale up, you might see a lot more of issues or a lot more of content versioning issues. So this is a Git location where I have my source files with, and you can actually download or fork it. So yeah, that's about it. And we can actually have any questions, or do you want me to walk around on the bot for some more time?
I'm going to leave the control of this session with you while I go through the questions, so you can kind of run through that, and I'll read some of these questions to you. The first one is, are intents recognized based on grammar? Would a chatbot work with localized content in languages different from English?
Well, that's a good question, and I've never tried with known English source files actually. I doubt if that might work, because as of now, most of these bots or most of these industry common the bot frameworks work only with English. But I'm not very sure of that though.
Okay. How does the AI handle typos that users enter?
Okay, that's a good question. So let me tell you that. The typos are not picked up easily. So you actually learn how to handle that the pretty hard way. So let me open this particular example, like configure, right? I click on configure as intent, and what you can actually do is you can actually list a lot of synonyms, right? About how people might be using the word configure. Like another option to use configure, can I configure, configuration help, configure was. Yeah. So these are the different. So these are the queries that I have actually got on my board when I have actually released it to a select audience, right? And I have actually trained the bot on all of these questions. Now, if I'm releasing the bot to all the audience in DITA Learning 2019, I might get like 200 or 300 different questions to the bot, and that is one big opportunity for me to train the bot on all of those questions. And and it also picks up typos during that that particular exercise. So synonyms and typos is something also which you can feed the bot. You can actually train the bot to understand, or to prompt the bot to ask you back whether this is what you meant. Did I answer the question?
If it does not, the person can get back to us, but that sounded like a pretty good answer to me. Another question, I just want to clarify. People can experiment for free with their own files, and also with the file set that you mentioned that is in Git. They can do that with Watson, right? Because a small file set, that is free for them to use, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one person wants to let you know this has been a very eye-opening presentation. Here is a question. What is the outcome and who is the end user of AI-driven DITA?
See, as I said, you shouldn't be looking at this from a production readiness perspective, right? This is something new. This is something new and which is within our reach. We just have to spend around a few minutes or maybe a few hours, one good morning, and you can actually get started. This is exciting, and that's what I initially said. I just wanted to share my experience of having an adventure with the system. I'm sure that most of our folks would be excited or would be eager to try it out. And it's too early to say how you can actually leverage this from a business perspective, but from a POC point of view, definitely most of our companies would support it. They would be interested as well. And the way I see it, let's get prepared, or let's skill ourselves better so that more better conversation systems happen in the future. We are more prepared for it.
And if you look in the questions panel, attendees, we did just drop in the link to the GitHub link, Vishal's GitHub. So take a look there. Also, we are going to drop in the link to the surveys for evaluations. So please, if you would, fill that out. We very much want your input during the sessions. Also want to mention the last session today, which is at 2 p.m. Eastern US time, 2 members of the Scriptorium team are going to be doing a question and answer session. So you can send your questions to experts@learningdita.com, and we're compiling those for that last session of the event. So if there's still questions you have, please send them to us and we'll do our best to answer them later today. Vishal, thank you very much. As someone says, as one of the attendees said, this has been a very eye-opening presentation, and we thank you very much for the information.
Thank you a lot. I mean, that was good to hear. I mean, it was great to be part of the DITA Learning 2019 conference. A big thanks to all the organizers. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.